Welcome back to the Ohio MMA podcast. Joining me today is Mr. Jordon Tague, who is an amateur MMA fighter and also the head wrestling coach at Notre Dame College in Ohio. So thanks for joining me, Jordan. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. First off, congratulations. You coached. I think it was your first wrestler to as the head coach, LaRon Parks, All American at the Division II Wrestling National Championships a couple weeks ago. How did that feel, being a coach and getting a fighter or a wrestler to an All American status?
Oh, it was awesome. We had kind of a rough year this year, but we ended up doing pretty well at the national tournament. And it was his third time making it, so I was glad to finally get him on the podium. And he did really well that weekend, so I'm very proud of him.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It feels like so the number that I saw was 73 All Americans, which is actually for a wrestling program that's been around for less than 20 years and started as an NAIA school.
Right.
That's absolutely incredible in terms of we're going to talk a lot about the Notre Dame and kind of the history, a little bit of the history and some of the craziness, but that's amazing, man. 73 All Americans from a small little school up in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, it's 88 in total. I believe 73 is the number of NCAA All Americans we've had. So I
Okay.
think 88 would include the NEIA back in the day.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you first. So I know you wrestled at Notre Dame,
Hmm.
and then got into MMA. You're 3-1 as an amateur. Is wrestling? It seems like you've probably wrestled most of your life, but was MMA kind of always the game plan to get into MMA afterwards, or what was the how did that path go?
It was always something I've thought about, especially when I started wrestling. And after I graduated college, I didn't really go straight into MMA. I just started working, and then I got back into wrestling. And once I started coaching, I just got the itch to start competing again. So that's when the MMA journey kind of began.
And I know you're training at Revolution Fight and Fitness, which is a gym that I see. The amount of talent coming out of that gym is very impressive.
Oh yeah,
From a gym that's kind of a little bit of a smaller gym, not one of the biggest gyms, but the amount of talent. Of course, Alonzo Turner, who wrestled at Notre Dame as well. I got to get him on. I know he's a shy guy, but I got to get him
yeah,
on the podcast one day. But Mark Gordon, who we had on a couple weeks ago. Tell me about the gym, and of course, run by veteran wrestler himself and MMA fighter George Comer, and then also the boxing coach Tim Stafford. Tell me about the MMA gym.
yeah. So the gym's awesome. We have, like you said, I have great teammates there. We have great coaching. George and Tim, they're both awesome. Um, they just get us doing the right things, get us, doing everything we can to just get better every single day. And the energy in the gym's always great. We all feed off each other, and we just want to make each other better every day. So it's awesome. I really am lucky to have found the gym. Of course, I knew Alonzo, so he kind of told me about it, and yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel lucky to be there and be a part of their fight team.
Yeah, and your first three fights, actually, it's kind of crazy because I go to fights all over Ohio and call fights, and I have not been to one of your fights yet.
Yeah.
Actually, you fought on the Ohio Combat League card. The one of the ones that I missed was your debut,
Hmm.
and then you fought for WFC, Made Men, and Cage Thunder. You fought for a bunch of different promotions early on in your career. Is that something that it seems like probably just taking the fights that are offered, but what's it like getting that experience under different parts of the state as well, and then also I know you fought some pretty tough competition
Hmm.
early in your career, especially I know a lot of times coming from a wrestling background, it's hard to find opponents, but you're going out and fighting in your second fight, third fight, guys that are pretty highly touted as well. And I know you fought Nico Odor, who's another former collegiate wrestler,
Hmm.
but you've been really impressive through your first four fights. And have you kind of had that mindset to take the toughest fights, or is that like the only fights you can get?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of both. Like, you know, George and Tim, they do a good job of trying to find us fights all over the state, and so it's kind of whatever we can find. You know, like you said, being a wrestler sometimes it's kind of hard um, to find fights. So we've just been able to just take whatever we can get, and it's been really cool to fight under different promotions and just get to see different venues and different cards and stuff. And yeah, but it's been really cool. It's been a great journey so far.
And from the wrestling side, so you obviously wrestled in college. You had a pretty good career, and then you became, I think, a grad assistant, and then assistant coach, and then the head coach.
Yeah.
Is coaching something that you always wanted to get into, that you always thought, or was it just something that kind of happened? And coming from a especially a school like Notre Dame that has the history, I feel like there's definitely got to be a lot of pressure to keep up the high level of excellence.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of pressure for sure. I never really thought about coaching too much. I mean, maybe at the high school level, but I got the opportunity to become a graduate assistant, and quickly became the assistant coach, and then the head coach ended up retiring, so I just kind of stepped up and took the head coaching position. Like you said, it's a lot of pressure being a part of this great historical program with all the success and being the leader of that for these last 2 years. It's been a lot of pressure, but it's something I really enjoyed, and I'm really wouldn't have any other way, and feel blessed to even have that opportunity.
Yeah, and so one of the things, and people might wonder, why we're talking so much about Notre Dame College, and of course we're bearing the lead a little bit. The unfortunate news coming out about a month ago that Notre Dame College is actually closing after the spring semester. Super unfortunate.
Yeah.
How is that kind of, I guess played into your life? Of course, that's your job, so that's rough. I'm sorry about that, but it seems like, are you planning on continuing to try to coach, or what's next for you, and how do you feel about the unfortunate news of the school closing?
So when we got the news, I just told everyone on the team, let's just focus on ending the season and getting to regionals and nationals, and then kind of think about things afterwards. And so on my end, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I have a couple of opportunities here and there to keep coaching, but I do really want to focus on MMA as well. So currently, I'm just going to stay focusing on MMA and kind of venture out and see what these opportunities look like for me. Otherwise, I might just try to find a job doing something else and continue my MMA career.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed on your record. It seems like obviously started fighting in 2022, but not as many fights during actually no fights during wrestling season.
Yeah.
Is that something? I know you mentioned that you want to try to stay more active, because you've only got 4 fights. Oh, I
Mhm.
guess over the span of like a year, which is a pretty good pace. But is that something that now that wrestling's over, you're like, I can really focus more on that? And do you have an idea of like when you want to fight again? Maybe think about turning pro on the MMA side.
Yeah, so I definitely now that wrestling's over, I definitely want to start being more active in fighting. I've considered, I definitely want to be pro at some point in my career. So definitely want to try to keep getting fights and being active. And then, when the day comes, become pro. But, got to get a couple more wins in here until that comes. But yeah, now that coaching's over, and that's something I have to think about as well, is, I like to kind of take the time during wrestling season to focus on coaching. So that's why I haven't really been active during those times, especially being the head coach. So it's something that's going to factor into my decision on whether I continue to coach or not, for sure.
Yeah, that's got to be super rough. But it looking back at it, and following, I probably never would have heard of Notre Dame College, even being from Ohio, if it wasn't for
Yeah,
the wrestling program. But then the big thing is the number of wrestlers from Notre Dame College that have transitioned to MMA,
yeah,
everywhere from guys that had 1 or 2 amateur fights, all the way up to world champion level.
hmm
I want to tell you this stat. So I found, and this is me going through with me and Mo Miller going back through. Who Mo Miller, of course, is
yeah,
a great fighter as well, who wrestled at Notre Dame College. But me and him kind of going back and forth and being like, oh, here's the list of everybody we can come up with that had MMA experience from Notre Dame, right? And I think all these wrestlers wrestled at Notre Dame, or at least were on the team at some point.
Hmm.
33 fighters produced from a Division two school.
Wow.
129 pro wins,
Mm-hmm.
37 losses, and 113 amateur wins, 24 losses. That's a 78% pro winning uh, uh, percentage and 82% amateur winning percentage. Overall, 242 and 61,
Wow.
80% winning percentage, which is ridiculous. And some of the names that people might know. I mean, some of these guys I didn't even realize, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy wrestled at Notre Dame too. AJ McKee,
Hmm.
Jared Brooks, Terrence McKinney, Cody Garbrandt, Joey Davis, Mo Miller, Josh Roller, Dylan Budka, Jeff Pelton, Joe Gigliotti, Alonzo Turner, Brian Hauser, Chris Williams, Kobe Fair, Anthony Jiggle, Sonny Marchette, who was also the coach for a
Hmm.
long time, Victor Crenshaw. That's just the pros. And I mean, it's just a crazy list of of that. Have you? I know you probably haven't looked at maybe all the stats, but what's your reaction to that? To hearing those numbers and like the wealth of like again a program that's not even. I think it started in 2006, 2007 as an NAIA school.
Hmm.
But what's your reaction to hearing those numbers and those stats?
It's just really cool to be a part of that historical, factor of what the program has produced outside of wrestling as well. Um, and that's something I've told a lot of my wrestlers as well, that if that's your goal, because a lot of wrestlers do look into doing MMA, it's like um, look at what we produce and the guys that have come out of our program. There's big names, UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, guys that have had a lot of success in the MMA world as well. So it's definitely really cool, and it was definitely a pretty neat recruiting tool for me as well, as I was recruiting new athletes to Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's something I never even thought about to like recruit guys to be like, hey,
Hmm.
look, we look at all the MMA fighters because when I talked to Cornell Beecham, who actually ended up winning a national championship at Mount St. Joe's, but he spent a year at Notre Dame College, and he mentioned
Hmm.
how many like former wrestlers were always kind of around the gym and training at Notre Dame, and
Yeah.
guys that had become fighters, and he's like. That got me thinking, like, hey, maybe I do want to get an. I mean, he actually had a little bit of a connection with Joey Patterson from Vision MMA, and his father were really close. But that is interesting, right? That's a very unique recruiting tool from wrestlers who may not get like, and probably, I mean, a lot of the guys, if you look at some of the talent, like guys that are Division One level talent, but maybe just end up at Notre Dame for whatever reason. That is a very
Hmm.
unique a very unique recruiting tool, and it's interesting that you use that as something to recruit as well. Um, have you kind of reached out or talked to any of the fighters that wrestled there and like kind of got their thoughts on it? One of the things I did because I'm working on actually a pretty big story about kind of the history and how uh, Notre Dame has been to Ohio MMA specifically, but also MMA in general. But have you kind of reached out to some people? I've reached out to some people, and everyone, of course, has great things to say. But what have you done anything from your side?
Um, Not really. I mean, I still kind of keep in touch with some of the local guys like Mo Miller and some of the guys that are still kind of around here. But yeah, I haven't really spoken too much to all the other alumni from the school. There, a lot of them are a lot older than I am, so I haven't really had the chance to even meet a lot of them. But yeah,
Yeah, it'd be awesome to do like some sort of like get together with all the
yeah,
guys because the
that'd be
names
really
are
cool.
crazy. Like,
Yeah,
and some of the people again that I'm like names that like I've been around for a while, and it's like these names are you know for me I'm like, oh my goodness, that name comes back, like Garrett Lineberger,
yeah,
who
hmm,
won a national championship, I think, right? And then
yeah,
he only
too.
had I think one or two MMA fights, but then now he's like one of the best grapplers in the world, and
Yeah.
not just MMA side, but also names that I'm like, oh yeah, he did fight,
Hmm.
and some of the names, and it's just crazy to see um, the list, and when you put it all together, it is very impressive. Um, have you kind of thought about like the where Notre Dame fits and because I haven't looked at like a bunch of other schools and but I even being like I'm an Ohio State fan and I follow Ohio State wrestling pretty closely, like even Ohio State that has produced like Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman and things like that still not the number of fighters, right? And Ohio State's been around for years, right? Like
Right.
Coleman and Randleman fought in the '90s. Have you kind of like thought of it like compared to other schools and how many wrestlers have been produced? I know like I think it's like Oklahoma State has a bunch,
Hmm.
but those are like Power Five massive schools, right? Like
Right.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I haven't really put it into that perspective, but it is interesting when you think about it. Like you said, a lot of those are bigger programs. Division One, Big 12, Big 10 programs, been around for a long time. Whereas we have been around for only like 12 to 15 years as a program, and to have the sheer amount of success in MMA fighters come out of our program is pretty special. And again, being a small school in Division 2 in Northeast Ohio, it's pretty cool to just to think about. And
Yeah. How many people when you recruit them they think that you're from the other Notre Dame?
oh, it happens all the time.
Everyone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I know this is the other one.
yeah,
Even people in Ohio, they're like Notre Dame College. Like the biggest one I remember is like when Cody Garbrandt when he was wrestling and people thought that he was going to go to Notre Dame. Like I didn't even know he was Catholic, right? Like,
yeah,
but yeah, that it is like I said, it's amazing to look back and unfortunate that the school is closing because I mean there's so many people that have been connected to that program. I know one of the people as well, Anthony Ralph, who was the recruiter there for a long time.
mm,
Now actually is a recruiter at Ohio State and putting in recruiting like some of the best classes in the country at the Division 1 level. As I mentioned, Sonny Marchette, who multiple people are like, make sure you mention Sonny because he's an amazing coach, right? Like,
yeah,
but yeah, it is amazing and to see, and I'm excited to continue putting together, all of the everything that I can find out about the wrestling and MMA connection because it is super unique, right? Like that's the thing that having covered MMA in Ohio for way too long enough to get gray hair, right? So, but it's something that is really cool. Like even like Cleveland State has a handful of guys, but it's not to the level of what Notre Dame has done. So,
yeah,
it's always been something that I've always wanted to like look into super closely, and now that unfortunately. The catalyst was the school closing, but
right.
it is something that that I definitely want to make sure that I do to see that people see the connection and
Mm-hmm.
how much it's meant to MMA.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, especially as alumni and as a coach here now. And I know a lot of the alumni they will as well. And that's one thing we've always supported each other as a part of the program. And everyone who's been there has always kind of looked back and in support of the wrestling program in general. So we all appreciate you doing your time to put that together and give us that recognition.
Yeah. One other thing. So I noticed you don't have a nickname. Do you have a nickname? We're gonna get you a nickname.
Not yet. I haven't really thought about it too much. I know in high school, my teammates called me JT, just my initials. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I've thought about. But other than that, I don't know. I'm just kind of waiting until someone gives me one, I guess.
that yeah, that's something I've never done in like so many years of calling fights. I've never given a fighter a nickname. So like, Cornell, when we're talking to him, I'm like, maybe I'll give you a nickname. Nothing like immediately jumped out, but
Right.
maybe if I maybe your next fight I'll call it and something will come out.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be cool.
yeah, but yeah, man, awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing you fight again. Hopefully seeing you coach some more as well. Anything else you want to mention?
Not really. Just, like I said, just getting ready to fight here soon, hopefully. Looking for opportunities and, just staying ready and staying focused on MMA for now. And then looking for other coaching opportunities if they arise. So,
Awesome. Yeah. Give him a call if you got
yeah.
if you got a coaching opportunity. Now it sounds like you made some. I mean, the other thing too is you have so many connections, right? Like you've
Yeah.
got people in all aspects. I mean, you've got people that are in UFC level, people coaching at Ohio State, coaching at other. What's his name? He's coaching at MSJ now, who wrestled at
Mason, Charles Mason.
yeah, Charles Mason. I'm like, yeah, so you got there's so many connections. You're like,
Yeah.
it's like a everything. It's like connected, and that is how especially college sports I know are very connected. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I'm sure you'll definitely, of course, land on your feet. You're a seems like you're a really stand up guy who has your head on your shoulders, which is something that's always great in the sport of MMA, right? Keeping that perspective.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's that's the hardest part, right? The mental aspect of it, because you
Hmm.
can get in your head and like, yeah, it seems like you definitely you got that side of it down. So
Yeah. Thank
that's
you.
yeah. But yeah, man, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I'm excited to continue working on this. I'll have something up here in the next few weeks, but I want to make sure I do it right, so I'm taking my time.
Hmm.
And yeah, anything else you need from me, or like I might be reaching out to you for some more stuff. But man, that's crazy. 73 All Americans, 80 wasn't there 87, 86,
88.
88 overall
Hmm.
All Americans. That's absolutely crazy.
Yep.
And the number of MMA wins again. I just want to say that again: 241 and 61
Yeah, that's amazing.
MMA win, 80%, and that's 33 fighters, and that's the number of fighters that I um, was able to find. I'm sure. Hopefully, I didn't miss anybody. If I did, it's Mo's fault. But because I went through once and I'm like, I missed a bunch. He told me like 10 more. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about all these guys. So, but yeah, man, thank you so much, Jordon Tague. His MMA career, we'll definitely make sure that we on Ohio MMA News whenever you got another fight. We'll maybe get you back on, and yeah, man, congrats on the All American, and
Thank you.
definitely looking forward to seeing what's coming next for you.
Great. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me on.
Yep. All right, and we
Yep.
will be back next week with another episode.